start. It's funny. I referenced the Purple Monkey recording here, which is the most viewed video on the FreeMoCap sort of pantheon, and it starts with a similar kind of like lament about the the parasocial weirdness of like trying to like pull up the energy of talking to a group when you're actually sitting in an empty room talking to a webcam. So it feels appropriate that we shall be sort of doing similar things now. All right, and 3, 2, 1, go. Sup? Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2026 State of the Skelly address. My name is Jonathan Samir Mathis. I am the creator, president, and CEO of the FreeMoCap Foundation, which is a 501c3 IRS certified public charity dedicated to the development and dissemination of scientific and educational free and open source software, among other things. It is 2026, which by some math that we're going to sort of show in a second here, means that FreeMoCap is approximately 5 years old, depending on how you start counting. Could be 6, I guess, if you really wanted to be it that way. But I think FreeMoCap has like a thing specifically is about 5 years old, which is quite a long time. The nature of these types of projects is that they get bigger as they grow. The surface area increases, the complexity increases, and the need to sort of manage the project in different ways changes as well. So this presentation is both to give a little bit of context for people who kind of are like floating around, sort of wondering about how things are going with the project. People might sort of wander in and out from the street, and people who've been around for a while who kind of want to have a sense of where we currently are and where we are going in the future, mostly focusing on the next year, but we can keep going from there. So we are entering, or we're somewhere around 5 years old, and it's been a long and fun journey since then. I'm going to go through in the sort of traditional three-part. I'm going to talk about a quick abbreviated history of FreeMoCap, not because it's super important, but because it's sort of like, I think it's just good to tell the story every now and again, so that way the general history and sort of context is sort of known. A big part of the transitional phase that I'm hoping for FreeMoCap over the next 5 years is one that really, continues to build the community around it and kind of like decenters me as a specific person. But for now, at least, FreeMoCap is really very, very tied up in the situation in this rough vicinity of the world. So having a little sense of the background and the current context will be helpful, I think, for people who are following along. Then we'll talk about the current state, numbers and financials, and sort of clients, people who we're working with, and then talk, hopefully, probably more of the time, a lot of the time will be spent talking about the future plans, specifically around the transition to V2, the version 2 of the software, which we are currently transitioning to, talk about some work I've been doing building something like a curriculum around FreeMoCap and shop and some other stuff, and yeah, just general projects that we have floating right now. So part 1, we're just going to do a quick abbreviated timeline of FreeMoCap. I would say that it's roughly started around 2017 when OpenPose happened for the first time. I really should have the GIF show up here of them using it, but I would say that was the first time I saw a viable markerless motion capture system that was capable of doing the 2D skeleton tracking that is the sort of the core technology that makes FreeMoCap work as a markerless motion capture system. So from there, after that, I was hired at Northeastern in 2019 and had 1 year of sort of standard human professorship before 2020 hit, COVID hit, and March of 2020, we all went into quarantine, and then through various ways and means around August of 2020, I lost all faith in the scientific, educational, and academic process. And then sort of roughly around that time of transitioning from somewhere around 2020 to somewhere around 2021, I reacquainted myself and realigned myself from standard academic to more free open source zealot, largely inspired by Blender and sort of understanding that this statement that the open source community is what the scientific community pretends to be. And they have a cat walking around, and also in the standard cat way of things, I have no idea how to do that with my computer, but somehow she always finds it with her feet. Okay. Yeah, so going through a quick sort of history of the actual technicals of the project. I went back and found the first public post, which was January 2021, sort of, this was OpenPose, 4 cameras, and I think, God, who even knows? I doubt this code is, I doubt I could even find it anymore. I'm not sure if it was on GitHub. Oh, did we just lose? Oh, God. Sorry. More cat crawling around problems. Pulled out the camera. Okay, we're back. So 2021, this was the first public post on Twitter. And then this one, 2021. So what is that? About 6 months later, this was now what I like to call the Meowmaline video, because the song that is playing in the background here, there's a song playing in the background which is Meowmaline, which is written by the inimitable Neon X Death in the server. So I made this video using, I guess you would call that the pre-alpha version of, it doesn't even have a version on here. Does it have a date? I didn't put a date on it. Rookie mistakes. And yeah, posted it to Twitter, got a lot of attention. And I think that was probably the first big boost of sort of people giving a shit about these silly skeletons. I guess they already had the logo at that point. That was designed by the also inimitable Taylor Davies, who, I don't know why people are always trying to imitate folks. Can I make that go away? What came next? Oh, wait. Oh, that's not the Purple Monkey video at all. That's annoying. 1 second. Let me find. That's the month. What? Anyway, so this video came out also around 3 years ago, using, yeah, this was part of a application for Epic Mega Grant, which we did wind up getting eventually, and it has a sort of brief manifesto of the reasons for, and sort of like motivation behind FreeMoCap, and it sort of is still front and center on the website and still gets a lot of views, still gets more views than anything else combined. Well, that's not really true. Well, no, it is true actually. And I should reprocess it with the new version. Like, I still have the data. It would work. I would be able to reprocess it with a new version, with a new Skelly, but I do kind of like the Purple Monkey just because this was first getting started around the Blender. So that's free. That's the one. I also did post this rough cut tutorial with the invaluable help of Brother Paul. There was also a cat who was being rambunctious in the video, and in a similar sort of sense of, this was rough cut because I was going to edit it down, and then that was like, whatever, 3 years ago. It's fine. Yeah, and then September 2023 was the release of version 1. At that point, I think there was no fanfare. It was more of a quiet affair of just pushing it. I think it was like, we had a bunch of versions that had RC on the end, and then at one point I was just like, okay, I think 1.1 was the first one without the RC, so it was a little bit, what's the word, anticlimactic, because it was, we just sort of, yeah, we skipped 1.0 and actually went straight to 1.1. But that's this one, and that is the current architecture that we are still using. It has improved a lot in many ways. I think special shout out to Philip specifically for doing a lot of the plumbing necessary to keep the dang thing up and running and fixing the bugs and making it workable, and also just basically dealing with all of my code slop in there. There was a lot being learned here, and ultimately the way that these kind of projects work, it is typically the decisions you make first that burn you in the end. And that's kind of the situation with 1.0 here, even as we are now on to, what's the next slide look like? 1.7 now, with many improvements in the background now, mostly at the data level, some at the UX UI level, some at the base functionality level. I think it's 1.7 that adds the ground plane calibration, which is a big technical leap, and yeah, just 1,000 tiny tweaks to make things good. I'm not going to talk too much about the details here about a lot of the parts, because those things kind of deserve their own video, but anytime I'm showing Blender and the add-on, I have to give one of, probably several dozen appropriate shout outs to old AJC for his hit again, inimitable, third time inimitable work in the FreeMoCap sort of community space. And he made also like a lot of the work in the Blender add-on. Yeah, so that was, November 23rd, that was about 2 years ago, and then a long, slow inching up from there. So around that time, I was trying to look if in the records of the social medias, if there's any specific moment that I could cite as the moment where I decided that we needed to slow the growth curve a bit, and I couldn't quite find anything. So it's somewhere in that range of like 23 to 25 that the community was growing, but it was growing kind of fast. And because it's a complicated software with many, just, it's even if it was a perfect software, it would be hard to use, and it's not a perfect software. So like I was just concerned about the rate at which people were coming in. Yeah, so sometime around the 23, 24 range, the project started to grow, and it was, yeah, and it started to get a little, I was concerned because I was feeling, I think that might have been around the time that I read this book for the first time, or I haven't read it multiple times, but I read it once, and it was very formative. It's Nadia Egbal, Working in Public, Making and Maintenance of Open Source Software. So the book is kind of a like an anthropological survey of open source software developers, and one of the main conclusions is that the primary resource to be maintained and protected in an open source environment is maintainer energy, because maintainer burnout, which maintainer is the person who maintains the code, for those that don't know, and maintainer burnout is the number one cause of death for open source software projects. And I was concerned that as the project started to grow and the surface area started to grow, we didn't really have the infrastructure to receive the people that were coming in because of kind of, the inherent contradictions associated with like the core mission of FreeMoCap, which is to make a software which is simultaneously a high level, high performance research software, but also something that is usable by 13-year-olds and people without technical background. That's inherently in conflict with itself. And so that started to feel that. And so basically, just stop posting, stop streaming. It's just the stopping of streaming was less of the control thing. It's just streaming is just somewhat exhausting for me. But I suspect it was something around here when you can kind of, and then it worked. It worked actually quite well. And so we stopped doing posting. So at that point the scale was such that there was enough organic growth that people were kind of making their way in. I was sort of getting to a conference every now and again, and then it's really focused the energy on, and then we also have really good SEO because a lot of people search for free motion capture, it turns out. And so when they do, they find us. And then, a lot of the effort of developing the project is making it sort of accessible to more people, and then more people show up. So we focused a lot of energy on the Discord community, and having, the weekly community calls have been really nice sort of anchor points. And once again, shouting out specifically AJC, but also just all the people in the server who kind of just like picked up the shovel and started to help, mostly in terms of just helping the people who showed up, get the thing installed, oh hey, can't tap my cameras, oh my calibration didn't work, all the things that realistically could have been solved by like a better UX, better UI, better documentation, all that kind of stuff, and all the things that we are developing and have continued to develop. But because they didn't exist at that time, a lot of that sort of work was sort of pulled by people in the community itself. Again, specifically Andres, but a lot of people are sort of in there talking. And yeah, and it's been really sort of gratifying to watch that happen and sort of like, appreciate the kind of the space that buys, like just sort of holding the thing up a little bit just every time you respond to a message. And that really gave, me and the core devs like the time that was needed to actually write the code. And so now here we are and now I think we're kind of ready. We're kind of ready for, the things to become. I think that, like version 2 is a full refactor of version 1. I think it will be generally more amenable to accepting outside help. And I think we're sort of ready to start up again, which is good because I guess the date's cut off here, but posted this with Paul the other day, and it, went out to the various socials, who apparently are still aware that I exist to some extent, because that's when this happened. So these are the stars. These are the basically like, points on GitHub, people that like the repository. This was the Meowmaline post. This was sort of the long, slow, healthy, steady growth there. And then we make one more post, and then this happens, and it's like, see, this is why. This is why you don't want to wake up and then there's another 0 on your user base. That's not comfortable. But yeah, this is, and I think, a nice representation of like about the current state of the data. This is nice, very clean data. Someone on a perfect treadmill, perfect lighting, and yeah, it looking pretty dang good. So that's a bit of the history. That's kind of how we got here. Now let's look at the current state of the thing, state of the project. Again, this this particular presentation will not be focused too much on the technical side of FreeMoCap. This is at like org level type of thing. So by the numbers, GitHub stars, we have 4,533. That, is sort of slow growth over time there. The Discord server has 3,000 plus people in it. Global users have over 10,000 and 140 people reached, which we will sort of take this moment to take a brief aside field trip into freemocap.org/data.html. I'm sort of up here on the panel. This panel is going to change how it looks in a second, but you'll figure it out. And so this is the growth curve over the. These are all the people. So these are the pings from the front of the GUI where it says, uncheck if you don't want to send anonymous pings or whatever. And so these are all the pings that have come in. Actually, these are not the pings. These are the unique IPs. These are the people who, which is our proxy for like individual people. And I stole this plot from climate change representation, but I think it shows here. And yeah, so if we look, so this is the fun animation, and this is the more static chart. We got users everywhere, all over the place. We have received 42,000 total pings from that thing, which if you kind of assume that like most people, if you see the box that says share anonymous data, most people say no. So, or I think I'm guessing it's probably about half. That might be optimistic, pessimistic, hard to say. And yes, so these are underestimates, and then the users, sort of estimated users, are sort of the unique IPs, which is of course, not accurate for a number of reasons. 140 countries represented from those pings, including, so I made this blob after I scheduled this talk. And when I saw this, I'm like, wow, maybe I shouldn't have scheduled it in the evening on the East Coast, because this is the middle of the night for where apparently our biggest core of people is, which is Central Europe, specifically in the kind of Germany, France, England area, which is where a lot of like research labs are. We got a lot of people in India, a lot of people in China. This is our total users over time. These are new users per day, and this is pings per day. I guess it should be flipped. So rate of growth is growing. And then this is some analysis of like, do people come back? Because a lot, almost half of these people are single shot, like bouncers. Like they see it, they turn it on, they can't figure it out, and they leave. So this number I think is kind of like a key, with a performance number I really want to look at, is like, how many pings do we get, but how many times do people come back? Like, we want people to be sticking around and learning how stuff works, which is, a design question that we'll get to. Yeah. So US is the biggest, China's number 2, Germany, India, France, Australia, United Kingdom. There are approximately 49,000 FreeMoCap users for 100,000 square kilometers of land in Monaco. So in case you were wondering about that. Anyways, I had some fun making these data blobs. But yeah, so the growth rate, I would say, is nice and healthy, and I think pretty neat that it is continuing to grow organically just through word of mouth and SEO. So you can kind of see, I think, like, there are probably some moments around here where I was like, oh, maybe we should slow down. And then, but generally speaking, the pattern here shows that like we are growing and the rate of growth is increasing. So it feels pretty healthy. And it does look like nuclear war, but you'll be okay. Skelly will save you. Yeah. Where was I? Nope, not that. I lost the presentation again. Okay. So yeah, so doing pretty okay there. So now now the financials. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I should have maybe, I don't know, I didn't really plan out too much of this. So in terms of the financials, as a 501c3 public charity, our numbers are publicly available through IRS 990s. Our 990s have not, I think, made it to like ProPublica at all yet, but I would assume they'll be there by next year. Long story short, we're doing okay. Up until now, FreeMoCap has largely, and I would say has been, by the numbers, primarily supported by the fact that I am currently employed at a university that shall remain nameless. And because FreeMoCap is a part of my research program, this is kind of, it's overlapping with my responsibilities there enough that I've been able to continue to sort of work on it here. However, a big part of the, losing faith in academia thing that I mentioned was part and parcel with like basically making the decisions in service of the things that I think I thought should exist, which is FreeMoCap, while understanding that that was not going to my life and academia and are not compatible for moral reasons. I There's a lot more that I can say about that, and I will tell that story in its entirety, but not while I am still employed by said employer. And so that moment, and so basically, we are now approaching a scary cliff on the road that I chose for myself 5 or 6 years ago, which is the end of my official contract. So now the question of 6 years ago was, can I set something up that will allow me to continue to live roughly the kind of life I like to live, doing research and building tools and teaching and doing mentorship and all that kind of stuff, without having to be attached to a degree granting institution that charges $93,000 a year for tuition, room and board for exactly the undergraduate students that are my responsibility. And so I've had 5+ years to plan for it, and the time is now coming. And again, I think we're doing okay. So we'll be able to survive past the last paycheck of June 30th. We'll still be able to keep paying Philip. We'll be able to start paying Aaron and the various et als around, and I'll be able to continue paying myself. The question mark I think now is about, we will survive. Will we thrive? This is the question. These are the questions of the next 5 months. And a lot of it, I think, is dependent on how some things pan out. And also, but ultimately, I think we're doing okay. I will promise you a more specific update next year, but for now, I'm going to leave it at that. A big part of the question with something like FreeMoCap is, how do you make money selling a free software? And the answer is it's hard and complicated, and probably something we can talk about in various ways. But long story short, there's been the financial strategy that I've been approaching is based off of stalking the records of every open source project that I can think of. And it's basically to do something of a patchwork approach. So you have a number of different routes that you take to try to bring in money, and they all have different validity at different timescales, and they bring in different amounts for different, whatever. Currently, so eventually the plan will be we're building the infrastructure to start applying for grants, which, we run relatively light. So a single sort of like solid grant would serve us for pretty well. And I have some targets for that in mind, probably sometime in June. And then the NSF Pose Award is something that we're going to be applying for in September. But the main sort of short-term target that we're looking at bringing a little bit of money is looking at clients. And so right now we have 2 research partners that are paying us to do dedicated work. Ben Scholl, the name Ben Scholl shall ring loudly in the histories of FreeMoCap for being kind of the first person to, not the first person to pay us anything, but the first person to really develop like a long-term research connection centered around doing motion capture and eye tracking in ferrets. And so this is a video that we put together before SFN. This is a ferret wearing a binocular eye tracker. We actually have better stuff kind of floating around recently, made some advances. The reason why I haven't been able to work on FreeMoCap since SFN, Society for Neuroscience Conference in November or whatever, is because I've been doing ferret stuff. But it's really fun, and it's kind of like, this is the kind of work that's more akin to like the, standards of like high science and, academia and like, big publications and stuff like that. Also not the most generally applicable to the world, I guess. Not everybody has an animal research lab, but it's been really fun sort of coming back into that space with the skill sets that, me and Aaron and Philip et al. Have accrued building FreeMoCap, and being able to kind of go back into these scientific research questions and just do stuff that you just can't do as a standard academic for a lot of different reasons. And I think it's going to go, there's a lot. My scientific career, I do not believe, is over, despite the fact that my official academic employment is coming to an end. FreeMoCap is sort of at its core a research institute. So I'm just now a self-employed rogue scientist doing eyeball work on tiny animals. So the latest addition to the short list of wonderful people is Diego Fernandez, who works at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical College, who we met through his student Burgundy Walters at Society for Neuroscience in San Diego. And they have commissioned us to build a mouse eye tracker. So smaller than a ferret, but I think it's handleable for, you know, again, into the technicals. But I will post a link to this sort of information in the description to the video. So you can go to the video. In this video, there's a longer description of the methods that are being used. But we have also been commissioned to build a mouse eye tracker for Diego Fernandez, specifically to look at pupillometry over sort of extended periods of time. So if you are a person who studies mice and are interested in doing mouse eye tracking, this is a really good time to reach out to us to get sort of, early bird special, I guess. As we are building the thing to begin with, this is a good time to sort of let it be known what your specs are, and you can support it early on, or you can buy it later, and it's, I guess, advantages for both. But, reach out to us if you have thoughts. More generally, I guess, slides are a little bit out of order. We are now offering paid service contracts, so unofficial motto is knowledge is free, labor is unbelievably expensive. So if you have funding and are interested in building particular research apparatuses, tracking the eyes of some strange animal, combine motion capture eye tracking in any context, or just generally setting up FreeMoCap as a research tool, let us know. It is not, it's, reach out to us through this services page on our website, and we can talk. It's not cheap work. These are not like, in no offense, but I do not want to write a grant with you. If you want to write me into a grant, I'm happy to do that. But it's, I'm at this point in the project, I'm not really in a position to like do free work for people. So if you currently have funding and are interested in working and building tools, let us know. And always happy to talk, but got to be really protective of the actual labor these days. We're also like, I'm not really pushing this quite yet. There's going to be, I think, more of this towards the once the V2 kind of comes online, but kind of like pushing for like, bronze, silver, gold sponsorship types of thing, using a very similar model to Blender, where you kind of have a website that you can sort of put people's names on, company logos and stuff like that. So if you are a business or working with a business who might want to, whose interests are aligned with FreeMoCap's, I guess, and sort of like, if if it is in your interest for FreeMoCap to be sort of successful and have specific sort of shapes, reach out to us, and we can, corporate sponsorship, the general sort of structure there is like, we put your logo in some place of honor, and then you get to have kind of conversations with us around, like, it's like like, I'm not going to shift the project, but I might shuffle the priority list based off of, what the constraints are. And we are, a certified public charity, so donations are tax exempt. Let's see, is there anything else to say here? I guess so let's move on. So that's about the current state of things. Let's talk about the future. Again, kind of a strange choice of link. Oh, that's why I lost it. But here, GitHub, FreeMoCap Projects 34. This is the FreeMoCap planning operations. You can get to it through I see how that works. The FreeMoCap Foundation repository. But this is a place that come check this to see what kind of the task list is. We keep it relatively up to date. It may not capture all the details, but we're sort of getting into that. Okay, so the biggest news of the biggest future plans, sort of the current work plan, is the transition from the version 1 of the software, which we've been using since 2023, into version 2.0. 2.0 is a complete sort of more or less from scratch refactor of version 1. I think there might be some parts that survive, even though it pains me to say so, but I think it might be a 100% from scratch refactor. But all the main parts are different and sort of generally built in an architecture which is sort of more modern, more robust, more professional, and critically more amenable to outside help. It turns out that if you have sloppy code, it is harder for people to help you out with it. But as the sort of general sophistication of like my skill set and the general sophistication of the software improves, it should become easier to bring more people in. So again, looking at this book, so Nadia Egbal differentiates between 4 types of projects. You got your toys with a small users and small developer base. Stadiums, which is a lot of users and a small number of developers. Oh, I got these pages backwards. Clubs, which are more developers than users, which is like AstroPi, and then federations, which is sort of like a good mix of developers and users. And right now, FreeMoCap is very much a stadium, small number of users, a very small number of developers, and a very large number of users, pretty large number of users. That is, it's been somewhat necessary of up until now, just because the tool itself is so complex, and I've been really protective of like going in there and like filling around, like very very protective of who actually gets to like contribute code to the software, which is sort of good in some ways because it keeps things working and it helps us to avoid tech debt, which can really, and tech debt and bloat and like meandering of focus, which can I think really kill a project like this. But ultimately, we really want to transition to a world where we can have a more people helping out, more people lending hands, and yeah, FreeMoCap has that. Again, I'm not going to go too much into the technicals here. I think I gave a stream a couple, I guess, months ago now about a deep dive into SkellyCam, and I think a new one of those is about percolating and ready for a deep dive into like the V2 architecture. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But currently, version 2 lives on the development branch of FreeMoCap, core FreeMoCap repository, and all the sub-Skellys. So if you go to the development branch of FreeMoCap, you can install that and see what version 2 is sort of going to look like. Currently, it looks like this, which the UI is again kind of busted, but it is functional, and it's kind of a React Electron front end with a Python fast API server backend, and then we'll talk more about that at some future time. I'm going to come back to this UI in a second. So the release plan is going to go through a standard development cycle. So currently we are in a state I call pre-alpha. Pre-alpha is where it's known to be broken. Like it's not like you can use the V2. You can use it. It does have real-time processing, which we have shown works at SFN. It does not have post offline. What am I saying? Yeah, we're currently in a state where like the best workflow we actually have right now is to use the version 2 of SkellyCam to record the videos and then process them with the version 1. So getting from the state of like fixing all the parts that we know are broken is how we transitioned from pre-alpha to alpha. So pre-alpha is known busted, alpha is now possibly working. I am not aware of any specific things that are known to be broken within the software. We're also going to be transitioning from this. So this UI is kind of like, it's built on good bones, so to speak, but it is not, it's ugly, you can tell. And so we're going to be another another person who deserves some laudations is Puya, who has been working on this sort of new UI here. It's got a nice splash screen, these little guys, got this cool Skelly and some links, and generally just a much better, much nicer looking, more modern, I guess you'd say, soft just UI. The only issue is that it's not correct. So Puya was looking at the V1 GUI when he was designing this, so a lot of the workflows are just kind of like not quite right for that, like the way things are going to be in V2, because it's like things have changed a bit. And so he and I have talked, we both kind of got busy, but basically the plan was to kind of like use this UI to just get it over the hump. So of like, okay, let's just like make sure all the pieces work in the connection of the front end GUI to the back end processor, and then sort of in parallel to that we can start taking inspiration from like the workflows that have sort of started to emerge in the version 2 to adapt as UI so that we can then sort of transition over. There's also a lot of stuff in like Redux and the state management. It's complicated. So So in the transition from pre-alpha to alpha, whether it's before or during, is when I envision that sort of transition to occur. Once it's in alpha, the idea is that I would be able to, like, that's when we say you should use this. It works. It will be better than version one, for a lot of reasons, mostly SkellyCam. A lot of the actual data processing may not change that much at first, but the SkellyCam integration is a big technical improvement, and also it will handle like real-time processing, so you'll be able to have real-time reconstruction, but you will also still be able to record the videos at full resolution and frame rate, so you can post-process as well. So yeah, I think if I had planned my life a little better, I'd be giving a little demo of it right now, but it's kind of just, I made the data dashboard instead of doing that. So yeah, alpha is possibly working. Let me kick the tires a little bit and sort of start off inviting people in, and then let the world discover that it's actually a busted and broken piece of thing. And then as it gets sort of kicked around in alpha mode for a while, eventually it starts to get to a point where we would move it up to what we would call a beta. I think historically we've skipped beta in some cases. We may wind up skipping beta now, but beta is kind of like, I am not aware of anything currently broken. It's no, sorry, that was alpha. Beta is like, it might actually be like ready for full. Historically, in most contexts, alpha is closed and then beta is open. But since we are open source, they kind of bleed together. But then once we sort of get from there, we'll go to the full release, V2. Probably we'll do some kind of like end of life, like sort of LTS, long term support, like support for version one, but probably not. It might just kind of reach a point where it's like, it kind of, here's V1, it is what it is. It's probably not getting better. If you need, you can use it until you're ready to transition onto version 2. Anyway, so that's roughly the plan. And yeah, so now there's a couple more little pieces to talk about. Timeline wise, at some point in past, I said that we would have something out by the end of the first quarter, which would be the end of March. Optimistically, I think we should hopefully be living in V2 alpha mode by the end of March, but historically, every estimate should be multiplied by some factor. So we'll see. And then I don't think it's too optimistic to say that by June or so we'll be in full V2 land. Oh, I also didn't have it on the slide here, but a huge part of the V2 planning and V2 architecture is single click installer, with like the ability to install it, run it, and use it without ever touching the command line is something that we don't currently have. We sort of have it with the PyApp installers, but those are not the most stable for a variety of reasons. So version 2 will have like a proper regular old standalone installer. I figured out how to do code signing, so your virus checker shouldn't eat it up. And that should be a world where we're living, freemocap.org/download, and it's just like every other software you've ever used in your life. And that is a time, I think once that milestone gets hit of you can use it without ever touching a terminal, I think that's when that plus real time plus like the improvements to the animation outputs, and then the general like scientific validity of it increasing. I think that once we have the standalone installer kind of like really solidly working, that's when the vibes of the project might change a lot. I think that no matter how easy you make it to install something from terminal, the terminal itself is going to knock out at least 90% of your possible user base. So I think given the bones that we already have with this sort of terminal based kind of janky app, my belief is that once we sort of transition to a more modern looking, sophisticated architecture, that's when we might see another zero show up every so often. I post one 20-second clip of someone on a treadmill. We see a noticeable jump in the what's the word, the star count. So who knows? Yeah, something not a lot of detail here. The version 2, but I do want to make the official public announcement. The version 2 data model will be wildly different from the version 1. So up until now, we've done a fair amount of work to keep things kind of like backwards compatible and across the different versions, and try to do open close type of stuff. So like we added a lot of new stuff, but we tried to keep things kind of where they were, so that if you're a grad student, anyone who has some animator who has like a bunch of pipelines built on a particular data model, we try not to break that. Version 2 is going to break all of that. We probably build some kind of like adapter thing, because the the core reality of like, if you like, you'll still be able to process and reprocess old stuff, because as long as you have synchronized videos and calibration data, we can work with it. We can build from it. But we're definitely stepping back, and we're gonna like rebuild the data model from the ground up in a sort of, it's gonna be a lot of tidy CSVs and then a Parquet database to sort of handle most of, like, each recording will have its data and mostly tidy formatted CSVs, config YAMLs, and then a Parquet database to sort of handle, a lot of the intermediate data, just to keep each recording folder kind of cleaner and easier to use. As the new software is more sophisticated, it will also have more sort of, it'll be easier to add more complexity around like user input. So we'll, in the past, we've had it set up like you push the button and it goes, and it kind of like it saves out pretty much the same thing for everybody every time. The new version will have more of a, like, you can check the boxes. Oh, I want this, I don't want that. Use, output in this format, not that format. So tidy CSVs versus wide format CSVs is a thing that I have been introduced to as a thing to think about. And we're going to continue the general strategy of having sensible defaults for everybody, but we're going to start adding more actual like user settings and capacities to like make more choices if you choose to. Oh, I see. A goat's eye, because it's, yeah, no, because of the, yeah, their eyeballs are football shaped, which does in fact look like goat eyeball, which is like rectangularly shaped. I say, looking at the chat from some time ago. Jawas also have weird eyes, don't they? Cool. So yeah, so as we transition, as we're going to be changing up the data model, I'm also gonna want to start doing more kind of like public facing kind of like request for comments. A lot of open source projects use these kind of enhancement protocols. So PEP is the classic one. So PEP 8 you may have heard of. Python Enhancement Proposal, I think, is what that stands for. And so we're going to start trying to do something around SKEP, so Skelly enhancement proposals. And the general sort of move there is like we in the core maintainer team will make some post somewhere publicly in GitHub, sort of findable in various ways, that says, hey, here's the plan, request for comments open for this amount of time, and then sort of invite people to show up and have opinions about things. Other people, like, I'm talking about it now from sort of like a centralized way, but eventually people can come in from the outside and say, hey, I have an idea for a thing that we can do that, and then other people can post their own Skelly enhancement proposals. And it's a way to sort of like invite community input without being like, what's the word, locked down by the need to have like everything be a conversation in the commons. So we post the proposal, but we sort of keep it as kind of like a conversational space. We sort of have conversations about it, but ultimately the decision comes down to the core maintainers, and ultimately those decisions come down to me. Another thing that probably should be written down in next year, I'm gonna have to write a lot about the governance structure of FreeMoCap for this NSF Pose grant, so I'll get some of that written down. But in passing, FreeMoCap is currently in the stage of what's called a BDFL, which stands for Benevolent Dictator for Life, which is a joke that was probably really funny in the 90s. It is the standard governance structure of open source projects. Like there's some person in the center that ultimately makes the decisions. So Linus Torvald running Linux is the classic. And BDFL is the simplest architecture, but it is also the most centralized and sort of problematic for a lot of other reasons. So I'm kind of proposing governance structure called BD FastPot, which stands for Benevolent Dictator for a Set Period of Time. I don't know exactly what that time would be, but the way I'm kind of thinking about it now is we've been doing this for 5 years. I think slash hope that in another 5 years it'll be a good time to start planning some sort of like a dissolution of centralized responsibilities. I am hoping that 5 years from now, 2031, God bless us all, if that around that time, I'm hoping that the general community structure of FreeMoCap will be such that like we can start having a governance structure and a sort of a conversation around the software that is not just like this guy saying stuff. But yes, it is. These are the challenges. But and the nice thing about the plan to have the benevolent dictator for a set period of time is that you're a dictator. So if 5 years happens and then I'm just like, oh, we're not ready yet, you can't, okay, we're going to push it out. We're going to push it out. And if you don't like it, let's put it to a vote. This is my Syrian heritage coming in. It's like, I know how to run elections as a dictator. You just say it because it's, yeah, free Syria. We good. Free Syria, death to tyrants, but not me just yet. Give me some time. There are models. So what's his name? Guido, the guy, the Python person, he stepped back. Ton Rusenthal, a blender, is he's there's some complex sort of transitional plan. I think he might be out now. I can't remember, but he made an announcement. It's like I'm stepping back, and there's a whole transition team that went on there. So, we're not there yet. We don't. It's not a problem. Yeah, Ton is now officially the advisor, which is kind of, it's like more of a big picture guy. Like I just I not right now, but I really want to be. I aspire to be more of a big picture guy, and I think that a big part of FreeMoCap is, so I have a certain set of skills as a research scientist, whatever we want to say about that. And those skills were unique enough that it got me the fancy science job. And yeah, and I could live a whole career being the guy that can do the thing, like the guy that can track the ferret eyes the best or whatever. But a lot of FreeMoCap, a lot of like the general philosophy of FreeMoCap is like I kind of want to disseminate this skill set and this knowledge and whatever it is that sort of got me here broader and wider and better than you could from the ivory tower. And the way things are going, I think we're getting there. And so I right now, I think a big part of the reason why I still feel like the need to be the central guy is that FreeMoCap is at the intersection of so many different things that I just don't. It's hard to hand off work because again, I kind of built my career on living in the Venn diagram of different fields and sort of expertises. And FreeMoCap is the thing that I was able to build because of that sort of like positioning strategy that I took. And so disseminating those skills is hard, and but it's kind of like it's the work that I'm doing and have been doing, and I think it's going pretty well. So again, my hope is that sometime, say in 5 years from now, because I am tired, there will be enough people around who have been doing it for long enough that like I can it's already happening. Like your Phillips and your Aarons and your Andreses are like every unit of time their skill sets ratchet up. They're making bigger decisions. They're running bigger pieces, bigger chunks, and that's going to continue. And more people are going to sort of roll in and have fun and learn and get better. And we'll see. You saw the nuclear war map, like where it's whatever the hell it was that happened in that manic episode of 2020. This appears to be resonating at some level. Speaking of dissemination and education and blah 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 blah, another big project of the year is the documentation overhaul, and specifically, rewriting a lot of the docs, gearing them, editing what exists, tuning it to version 2, and then just expanding the crap out of it. So I have been a professor for 6 years, whatever many years now, and I've taught a lot of classes, and the classes that I teach are sort of around this stuff. A lot of my classes are, you can watch them on my YouTube channel, if you're into that. But now that sort of official academic ivory tower phase of life is sort of drawing to a close, I am ready to start, thinking about how to sort of, build more actual education and structure into the FreeMoCap sort of lifestyle or whatever, or project. Like the FreeMoCap has always been at its core an educational project. Let's see. So wait, what am I trying to show here? I'm trying to show this. So I already have pushed a thing there's a repo, github.com/freemocap/university. Oh, it is almost entirely AI generated at this point. I found myself in a situation where I was like stuck in an airport for quite a long time. So I kind of like vibe coded this whole thing. So it's not like, it was kind of like very long voice transcriptions type of stuff and like materials I already had. So it's really fairly well tuned to like my actual what it actually needs to be. But just saying, don't go, if it's AI slop in here, so don't get too excited about it. But the general structure is it gonna be not that. What are we looking for? This is a good representation. So this as well as a little vibe coded sort of viewer. But the basic idea is going to be like building a curriculum using both my experience running the project and also my experience as a college professor teaching students, and have kind of a module based curriculum with micro certifications associated with it. So the idea would be that you'd have like a beginner class. This is sort of pretty similar to our current documentation, and then sort of a more advanced, FreeMoCap usage class, 101, 201 type of thing, and then splitting out into kind of different subspecialties. So, if you want to focus on like, you know, the three main sort of sections are the technology, meaning mostly like development and the core tools. So SkellyCam, Skelly Tracker, Skelly Forge, Skelly Blender, Skelly Core, kind of. So splitting up the curriculum around the technology according to the structure of the actual project, and then also subspecialties under like the scientific route, which is the basically like the scientific applications of FreeMoCap. So for using a FreeMoCap as a tool for studying perception motor control, biomechanics, motor control, getting towards clinical applications, things like that. And then the third leg of the tripod, I guess, is the artistic route. So that's the animation and game designer stuff. Realistically, this is the part that I personally know the least about, but I'm learning a lot every day, and there's a lot of people in the community who would, I'm sure, be able to help out with that. So this is sort of the idea of I guess, official, unofficial announcement of the possibility of starting to work on this, the sort of like the FreeMoCap University approach, which will basically involve slowly over time me adding new, basically fleshing out each little blob here. Each dot in this graph is intended to be kind of like a little short course, and short course meaning like a lecture plus some sort of optional, like, to have micro certifications you have to have some kind of an output. So we're gonna like record, like, one of the things might be instructions on how to like record your own recordings, then you can upload it to some server. It does some sort of internal checks of validating that your data is not bonkers, and then if you get it, then you get a little check mark, and then you get the micro cert, and then that's like, basically it's a badge you can put onto various places, and you give you a little badge in the Discord server and stuff like that. So this is something, it could take a good long time, but I think on the scale of a year, I would hope to have some success in chunking this out. There's also, like, once you have a curriculum like this, there's funding that you can get around that. Like this is fundable at some level, or at least can be a component of a grant. So we'll see. Oh yeah, another announcement. So I feel like I've been teasing this for a while, but SkellyBot coming soon to a server near you, optionally if you're not into it. So this is like a project that I've been working on for, like, years now, but it hasn't really made it much to like the forefront of like the FreeMoCap conversation. Long story short, I have been, since I think it was the summer of 22, I can't remember exactly. I've been building and deploying AI-based teaching tools in my classrooms, and so I wound up teaching 6 total semesters this busted, using this SkellyBot repository. SkellyBot is basically an AI chatbot that lives in Discord. The tech has shifted. Discord has never been the right tool for the job there, but the general strategies that I have learned around using AI in a teaching context, and sort of like building educational structures around the use of AI that open up the possibility of teaching in ways that were just not possible beforehand. And a big part of it is like using the AI bot as kind of like a simulation of what it would be if you could do what everybody knows is the best way to teach, which is mentor-based self-learning, right? Sit down with an expert and they like hold your hand and tell you stuff. That's obviously the best way to learn stuff, but you can't really scale that out. So a lot of the teaching structures I did was based around like me giving some sort of centralized lecture kind of thing, usually in a very way that's super dense and super, like, way over the heads of the undergrads in the room, and then using kind of the specifically prompted AI bot to kind of like give them the experience of what it would be like if I were able to sit down and talk with them specifically. Had a lot of really good success with that, and I think that same kind of model of using the AI as sort of like the buffer layer between the one to many of teaching, where there's like one professor like object and many student like objects, having like the AI middle layer there to sort of smooth out that transition is something that I want to incorporate into this world of open source software, because I think that the one to many problem, boy howdy, it shows up. And I think that in the world where we're trying to bring more people into the project who can contribute and sort of like find their space within like the pretty broad technical landscape that we cover, these kind of teaching tools I think can do really well. So we'll see. Right now, trying to get to the point of feeling comfortable enough with the structure to just put it in the server. I think that there's a lot of what we would call RTFM questions that show up. No shade, but it happens a lot. There's a lot of questions people ask that the bot could answer pretty well. So there's a certain social aspect of like, how do we sort of integrate AI into a community space without it like feeling shoved in an uncomfortable way and in an unhelpful way. So I'm trying to be very careful around that, but it is sort of, again, on the space of a year, I would hope to have this shoved in. And minimally, it's definitely going to be a part of the educational program here, because I'm going to be applying the teaching strategies that I've developed to this FreeMoCap University project. Where are we at? Getting close. SkellyShop. Hoo boy. Talking about money. Cash money, guys. So this is one of those things in terms of the patchwork of potential income streams. This is, I'd say, short-term small potatoes, long-term medium potatoes. The main thing now is that there is now shop.freemocap.org. It does exist. You can use it. And specifically right now, the main thing is it does is that you can, does it not show the two? Why isn't, wait, where's the other one? How do I see the second page? Am I blocking? Okay, I don't know why that isn't showing up there. So this is, you can buy a Truco board. It's not this, we changed to the smaller one, but this is an older one. It's this size, so it's 18 by 24, so it's pretty solid. It's on this sort of corrugated plastic. This one just has the Skelly head, but the one you ordered here has the full cheat sheet, which looks really nice, blown out big. So it's kind of like you use the front of the board to calibrate it, and then the back of the board to sort of teach you what you're actually doing and give you sort of helpful tips and advice. It's currently running through a print on demand service, so it's like expensive and slow, and we don't make any money off of it. So I don't like that. So it costs $25. I think shipping winds up being like 10 or more. I don't know. And we don't make any money off of that. That's like breaking almost even. So I hate that it's expensive, and I hate even more that it's expensive and that it's not it's not even getting we're not even getting any money out of it. But it does exist, and that's the important part. And there's some, obviously, I think, a lot of opportunities for more sophisticated systems. There's like, like if we just print them in bulk and then send them out ourselves, we can have a much different, like the cost structure changes dramatically there. But then now you have like sort of more labor involved. This may be talking ahead of myself, but I'm sort of expecting to get connected to sort of a local like tech incubator high school type of thing. And then, people doing work study and stuff like that who can actually do the little manual labor there. So we're going to try to flesh this out. So I think currently this is a pretty good way to get a Taruko board. Like, I think we're competitive with what you would pay at like a FedEx or a Kinko's or that type of thing. I have no idea what the landscape would look like internationally, but I'm speaking for America. And one of the more important pieces of work here is that the shop exists. It's connected to a bank. It's got Shopify. It runs, and we're gonna keep working there. There's also, again, similar story. You can buy a $7 sticker, but don't think that we don't make any money off of this. It's like the print on demand stuff is around it. Yeah, it's fine. Another ad has hit the stream. That's okay. But yeah, so we do have this. You can now buy it. It's not it. We'll get there. We'll get there, one thing at a time. Yeah, and then so the other thing that the shop will eventually do is sell camera hardware, extension cables, little tripods, camera mounts, stuff like that. That's another thing that is going to take a little bit of time and sort of realistically would benefit from having, some kind of captive audience of, low level labor, because I tried to figure out a way to do it through just like drop shipping methods, but ultimately you just kind of don't have enough control over the camera. Like, I wasn't able to quite figure out options that sort of felt good to be able to sell. So similarly for this, I think it would want to be something where we buy some stuff in bulk and we kind of package it out on our own. And that, for that situation, cameras get real cheap when you buy them in bulk. So especially these kind of, I don't know if I have any I can reach right now, but like the kinds of cameras we've been using in a lot of my daily life, I bought, in a pack of 100 for $1,000. Oh, did I lose my video again? Yeah, 1 second. Hello, hello. Okay, we're back. Hello, we're back. Speaking of cameras, yeah. So, if you buy cameras in bulk, they get really, really cheap per camera. And I think that it wouldn't be too hard to sort of find a source like, the right kind of factory in China to get, large amounts of cameras, and then sell them, and then sell like packages for classroom settings, stuff like that. And I think that people would be into that. And then once you have a system like that where you're fulfilling the mission and having like the cheapest possible entry point for motion capture, then you can also sell better cameras, higher quality stuff, higher cameras. Cameras go all the way up and all the way down. And a lot of people, there's people out there who would be willing to, who want the research cameras. Like the people who are building research labs are now actually trying to minimize cost. So that's kind of a part of the infrastructure that we're kind of like planning out. And yeah, in the short term, probably not going to make any like actual like meaningful income out of that. But while I'm trying to get the cheapest possible option onto the shop, it's much more of a community support thing. Like I'm just trying to find a way that y'all can get the stuff you need to do motion capture like as cheaply as possible. Like I don't want you to have to go to Amazon or I think we could even do better than like AliExpress and stuff like that with the right kind of planning. And then just taking the question marks out of it. And then, I don't want to make money off of that layer of the community, but once we have that set up, the people who have more money to spend, we can sort of have different arrangements there. We'll see. Well, where are we now? Ah, yes, validation. One of the very exciting moments of FreeMoCap history is coming up, which is old Aaron Cherian is about to defend his dissertation. In the next couple of months, Aaron has been working dutifully since day one, really, I think, doing like the really hard work of validating FreeMoCap as an actual clinical research tool. These are just kind of it's more placeholder than actual anything else. It's just like here, let me dump all the data down. And so his dissertation is about using FreeMoCap, validating FreeMoCap as a clinical research tool, and he is soon to be sort of defending that. And then the idea is that he's got this. Where did you go? Did I lose again? Oh, I know. Here, I clicked too many times. There it is. So we have this. Oh, is that FreeMoCap? Like he's been working out of this FreeMoCap validation repository, and that will be both kind of like a source of code and data and visualizations and documentation, and then also kind of serve as like a white paper for the validation. So he's going to defend that. We're going to sort of clean it up for more public facing capacities. I'll publish it in some kind of peer reviewed journal or another, and then once that's kind of working, then we're kind of ready for a new plan, a new target, which is this is like a multi-year target, and that's to get FreeMoCap FDA certified as a clinical research tool. 510K certification, they call it. Currently, so the rules are that FreeMoCap cannot be used. We can call ourselves FDA certified as a research tool simply by putting this statement on here that says that it is not a clinical tool, which is really funny to me. Basically, the idea is that you say this is certified as a research tool. It is not to be not cleared for clinical use, so not to be used in diagnosis, not to be used in treatment, stuff like that. So you can use it for research, publication, like that kind of thing, but you can't use it to like diagnose somebody with an illness or something like that. To get to FDA certification as a clinical tool is a set of somewhat complicated. It's some complicated stuff. Like it's federal stuff, and it involves a lot around the code, like the software itself being to a certain point, the documentation being to a certain point, and showing that it is possible for researchers in other places to use the tool and have reliable outputs from it. It's FDA sort of like the ruling of the for stuff like this, for free stuff like FreeMoCap, is that there are not really risks to the patient for using it, but there are patients because it's complex enough that there's a possibility of clinicians using it and getting like bad data and then having bad sort of decisions based off of that. That's the risk that they're concerned about, which honestly is super valid. So the work that Aaron has been doing for his validation for his dissertation is kind of step one towards this sort of longer term journey towards getting this FDA certification. Realistically, it's like that's the kind of thing you can write grants around. It's probably going to be like a multi-year target to shoot for, but once we do get there, then we're now actually like you could put us into hospitals and it's kind of like I've had this dream for a long time of like the $500 gate lab. Like you usually like you don't get a gate lab in a hospital that doesn't have less than like 5-6 figures worth of funding, and we could potentially build something that like you could put in places that have really no resources. And I don't know if you can think of any places that might be in the need of really low cost prosthetics fitting, but I certainly can. And this is something that, again, you can pursue it in various levels, but since we're talking about org level planning, we do want to target, trying to getting the federal certification, I think is a target to be shooting for on the next, n number of years, shall we say. Getting close. And then finally, last but not least, the Blender add-on, the FreeMoCap Blender add-on, which again, Andres has been key and critical for this and just doing really amazing work. Yeah, yeah. If you use FreeMoCap at all, you've used the Blender add-on, and if you haven't, then you should because it's really cool. And the next sort of goal there is, first of all, we're going to transition the name. We're going to call it transitioning to Skelly Blender so it fits the model. It's also kind of funny. And then the next target there is that there's a relatively small but sort of important list of things that have to be true that we'd have to hit to be able to be hosted in the official Blender extension. Oh, sure. Come on, man. I'm not doing all that. So one of the things that happened with one of the more recent versions of Blender is that they've put out an official extensions sort of repository where like single click install, and I would love for FreeMoCap to be in there. So there's not a ton, but not horrible amount of work to be done to be able to be hosted there, and so that's going to be something we're shooting for. And I believe that's it. So thank you to everybody who stuck around. It's always fun talking about plans, fun getting into it. I always feel a little just have to like get past the awkward. It's like every so often you're like, I'm sitting alone in a room, and then it's like, oh wait, no, there's people here. So hey, Mycon, good to see you. And Studio Golf, good to see the names. Good to see. Yeah, some of y'all been around for a long time. We've gone through. The world has gone through its paces, and we are still here, and we will continue to be here. FreeMoCap is a long-term project, as you might be able to tell. I'd say it was born out of a moral imperative that I sort of found for myself. It's labor of love, sort of necessary passion. People talk sometimes about people sometimes describe this as like a charitable activity, and I guess technically officially it is a charitable activity, but like it's not like I feel like I have a lot of other options, like not, I mean I do have options, but like this is kind of like it just feels so much, it's the thing I should be doing, so I'm doing it and it's working out, and it's not a lot of people are around doing it, a lot of people helping, community's growing. It's really great, really gratifying and exciting. And yeah, it's like what am I gonna do, charge for it? That's insane. If I was gonna charge for it, I would just stay a professor, or go work for Google. When I talk to people about FreeMoCap, by far the most common thing that people say is, why is it free? Why is it free? What do you mean, why aren't you charging for it? That's a thing of value, they say. It's a thing of value, why aren't you charging for it? But ultimately, one of the rules of FreeMoCap is that anything that can be duplicated infinitely we don't charge for. So I can't imagine the ethical grounds of like just charging for a piece of binary code, for charging for a pile of Python, by whatever strange quirks and twists of history and my talent and mentorship and training and whatnot that I've managed to receive, I, for whatever reason, found myself with the ability to build a project like this and to teach other people how to build a project like this. And the idea of like there was a time when I would look at like the paid versions of FreeMoCap, like the Move AIs and the Cocos and whatnot, and I was like, well, no harm, no foul. But I radicalized a lot, and yes harm, yes foul. Like it's just I see that as like you're another person, whoever, like another person, group of people who also have this like capacity to build this kind of thing, and then rather than giving it away, you leverage the distinction, that distance between you and the world around you, to like suck money out of people. And it just, I don't like it, and I don't support it. So yeah, so we built FreeMoCap, we seized the means, and we see where it goes. Thanks Mycon. And so then to the question of like, why is it free? I kind of I've discovered a response to that. I've discovered a good answer, and that's, you just say it's a moral thing, and people go, oh, I get that. I get morals, because it's like it short circuit the conversation, because it's like you're living in this world of capitalism, and people, I think, you literally, they say, oh, that's a thing of value. Why aren't things of value are based in, you charge for that? That's how you survive in this horrifically idiotic structure where the base level human interaction is assumed to be competition. And so if you flip the question and you say, rather than asking why is it free, just sort of start from the basis that it must be free, and then ask the question of how are you going to support yourself building the thing that must be free. And I think that there's answers to that, and I think that we're finding them. And I think that a lot of it comes from, understanding the value of your labor and charging for it, you know, charging a lot because that's what it's worth. I know the value of my work. It's high. And, we'll see. We'll see. It seems at this point, I'm not sure what our bus factor is right now, but I think it's pretty okay. I think it'd be a bummer, but I think we could survive a relatively unfortunate incident with a bus. Possibly multiple buses, but I'm not sure about that. At least one bus. And yeah, and we'll see. I think, yeah, I think close out. Yo, it literally used to be called OpenMoCap. There was a period of time where it was called OpenMoCap, and I think there was like a name conflict. Something else was called OpenMoCap, and then I transitioned the name. And to quote Brother Paul, Neon X Death, I was like, I'm thinking about like OpenMoCap versus FreeMoCap, and he said, well, if I saw both of those next to each other, I would definitely go for FreeMoCap first. And yeah, I think that's correct. And it's like, you're absolutely right. Open means something different now than it did 5 years ago. And I think it's like if it was Open MoCap, we could charge for it without changing the name, and that feels wrong. With Free MoCap, we have to change the whole name, change it to Fee MoCap. Someday I have a dream about like having a version of Free MoCap which is literally exactly the same, except it's called Fee MoCap, and Skelly's got like a monocle and a hat, and you just charge $20 for it. It's like a way of giving a donation, and like everything is exactly the same except that the Skelly mesh is wearing a top hat with a monocle, and the logo says Fee MoCap. We'll get there. Not yet. That's gonna be that's down the road a little bit. Okay. So I said I was gonna talk for 45 minutes to an hour. I've been talking for an hour and a half. This is how I roll. But we'll end it here with this nuclear explosion, this sort of global thermonuclear apocalypse of people building skeletons out of light in their living rooms. And yeah, I guess it's like I see you. I see you there in the Faroe Islands. I see you doing your thing. Who knows? Look at you in Oslo and Stockholm with your syndromes. Look at you in India. Who's this guy? Who are you? Right? Who are these guys? What are they doing? What are they building in there? That's what I want to know. Thanks for not unchecking the box, guys. I like to see the dots. It really, truly, truly keeps me going to just kind of like every so often log in and be like, holy shit. Holy, you guys are using it. Maybe someday I can go on like a Johnny Appleseed tour and just pick two blobs and then just like go there. Yeah. 10K, man. Yeah. I'm so glad I set up that ping thing. It was a little bit of it felt weird to do any like data collection, but like boy, I don't, man, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine. I don't know, like I don't know. Look at him. Look at them there in Manila. Quazon. Kazon? I can't read that word. Yeah. If you make something for a community that doesn't have resources, no, that's not, it's not that. It's like if you make, I don't know, people like free stuff. And I just feel like, from a business perspective, like if your user base is, if your cost is zero, then your user base is theoretically infinite. And in software money world, they talk about, like, what's it called? It's like money per user, like price per user, resources per user, whatever it is. The dots are light in the darkness. I should do that. That would be nice. Oh, can I have that? Do I have that? Hold on. Oh, no. Oh wait, no, I can still do it. There you go. See? That's nice. Also, yeah, some good contour maps, heat maps. Wait, I don't know how to make it go away. Anyways, that is, I agree that's nicer. It shows up. Yeah. Okay. Oh wait, actually, oh no. Anyway, all right. Last call for comments. And then I'm gonna go pass out. I feel like I say this every time I do a stream. I'm gonna try to stream more because I do like it and it's fun and it's a good way to kind of like, just think. I think with the project where it is now, the communication stage, it continues to be really important because I think the scale of the project is such that it would be easy from the outside to not realize that there's a lot of action here because we move slow because we have a effort, low available effort. But I just think it's important to, yeah. So having streams, having talk, putting stuff out. Generally, we get like it's famous last words. I plan on stream more often as famous last words, and they're the last words I think of every single stream I've ever made. Someday it'll be true, maybe. I guess that's not a guarantee, but someday it might be true. You never know. Okay, let's play the game of, let's figure out where to raid y'all to. While I'm looking for a raid is a good time to say stuff if you want. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for, if you're watching this live or if you're watching this not live. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your interest. I don't know. The science person. Chunky stuff. Yeah, let's kick you over here. That seems like a good choice. All right, now I go over here. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. Oh yeah, Nikon's talking about fancy equipment. It is another thing that I didn't mention, but as the core software stabilizes, it opens up more room to like have like non-default options. So a big part of the work that's happening for V2, which I didn't mention, is like removing the necessity to use MediaPipe for everything and having the like more hot swappable models. Like the Ferret stuff was built with Deep Lab Cut, and then Aaron's been working with RTM Pose and VIT Pose as options. So in the similar space of like making more generic, make the software becoming more generic and able to handle more options, weirdo fancy cameras is also kind of a part of that conversation. Like I still have all of my 3D depth cameras and stereo and connect kind of cameras that would be so much fun to integrate into the FreeMoCap thing, but I just have not allowed myself to do it because it's like a sort of for specialized equipment is sort of forbidden. But I think as things get easier to integrate, it'll be more possible to do that kind of thing because it's fun. Weird cameras are fun. Raid. Okay, go talk to this guy. I hope he's nice and good. Talking to you guys. Have a nice night. All right, bye. Thanks. And then I think I have to wait 10 seconds. Yeah. Okay. And there it goes. 3, 2, 1. Oh, now I click the button. Bye. Okay. Now I have to figure out how to turn this off.